those things, it's better to go with an anomaly-based approach because, like the previous case, as I said, the network-based IDS will monitor the activities of a machine, and if it starts behaving arbitrarily, then raise a flag. Instead of just waiting for a perfect signature that you can get and then raise a flag, because you don't have a signature for a malware that is behaving for that is designed for a zero-day attack. Okay. Now, botnet is kind of like have you heard of this term called zombie and all those things, denial of service attack. So statistics says that 25% of the machines in the internet are zombies. So if your machine is in the internet, there is a 25% chance that it could be a zombie, which you don't know. So again, it could be hiding itself as a Trojan. Okay. So what is a zombie? It's basically an agent for a remote attacker who's trying to damage affect several hosts without being able to be easily tracked. So the attacker may be running in one machine, and he'll try to first find those agents by infecting those genuine machines, and these are called the zombies. And there will be, say, a server, which is the victim. So once he compromises several machines, the zombies, he will let those zombies to really send some packets, like if you have seen, I think you saw this TCP flooding attack before, if you remember, when you look at firewalls, right? Each zombie will try to establish a TCP connection to the server and kind of overload the server by just establishing some fake or dummy connections. And the server gets overloaded. And when a genuine client contacts the server to get some service, it denies service to that server, to the client, right? So that's a classical example of a denial of service attack. Now, this is called actually a distributed denial of service attack. Why? A simple denial of service attack is when a single attacker tries to attack a server by sending multiple TCP connection requests. That's a very traditional denial of service attack. Here, the attacker is still single, but he's trying to attack the server from multiple machines in a distributed fashion from all these zombies. So it's very difficult to do what is called a trace back, because here you can trace back and find out all packets are coming from a single machine. Whereas here, if you trace back, you will find out that the packets are coming from several machines. So you cannot really blame on one machine, or you cannot really find all the sources from which you are getting packets and things like that. Okay? So a distributed denial of service attack is very difficult to detect, prevent. You can detect it, of course, once you get infected, but it's very difficult to prevent and trace back where the attack is all getting from. In the early 2000, its Yahoo server was attacked. That's when it became very famous, the DDoS, we call distributed denial of service attack. Okay? So this is the whole network, is called the botnet. Okay, the network involving the attacker, all the zombies and the victims, so everything. It may not be a very simple connection like this, there may be some other intermediate zombies too. So the whole thing put together is called a botnet. Okay? And also, if you capture the zombies, you may think that because all the zombies are getting instructions, because once the attacker compromises the zombies, he has to really remote control them. So all the instructions are sent by the attacker. So you may think that you can backtrack from here and capture and find out who is controlling them, right? But now there are very smart ways attackers are handling the zombies are no longer programmed originally or in the early days. The zombies are programmed with a static IP address of that corresponds to the attacker's virtual machine. So once you capture some zombies, you can do some trace back and find out who's really controlling what IP address, because that IP address remains the same. But nowadays, attackers are using dynamic IP address and they are not making the zombies to remember the IP address of the attacker. So even if you capture those zombies, it's very difficult to trace back and find out who is really controlling them. Okay? Is that clear?
Are the zombies actually code or executable?
Which one?
The zombies, are they code?
The zombies are like this rootkit. It's a code, it's a program, software, but the machine is called an agent. The zombie means an agent. So once it's a rootkit basically running on this zombie. Once it runs, it behaves as an agent for the attacker. Okay?
Does it have to be a machine that stays on all the time, or is it? I mean,
yeah, it has to be running on. If it's not turned off, it cannot really do anything.
so they probably just it's more of a net. They use more of network computers.
Right. Network computers that are on the network. But if your machine is running in the network, you're going to use ISP, it may still behave like a zombie. Okay? But it may not be that easy to make an ISP machine to behave like a zombie, because your IP address changes each time you boot up. But if you're saying a Jackson State machine, it may be easy to be a zombie because its IP address is more a public IP address, 143.132. Right? So, but still the statistics says roughly 25% of the computers on the internet are the zombies, in one way or the other. Okay? There is something called, I think you did a project on what is that? Wireshark, right? And with that you are analyzing packets on a local network that you are capturing and doing it, right? There's also something called remote packet capturing analysis, which means you can capture a packet in a remote network, not on your network, and analyze the packets that are being sent on that network. And so that may be one way you can really detect what is going on. Okay. Of course, there are a lot more that we can talk about malware. So this is the probably last slide on this one, privacy invasive software, where I just want to talk about briefly adware and spyware. So an adware is a kind of first of all, privacy invasive software is a kind of malware or a category of malware that targets sensitive information of users, okay, as well as it performs some activities based on some kind of intelligence. So for example, if you are infected with an adware, it monitors what you have been doing, and if you have been going to some book related websites, like if you went to Amazon and a couple of book websites, then you start getting ads that tell, okay, this book is for sale, or this book is for this, and so on, right? And if you have been going to some movie websites and seeing some movies, after a while you'll start getting some ads related to movies. And so it monitors what you have been doing, and it pulls up relevant ads and kind of basically irritates you or kind of annoys you, right? So that's the basic objective of the ad. Okay. Sometimes if you click those things and go to buying those ads and buying those software, you may be in serious risk, because you never know if you buy certain things through those ads, you're entering your credit card information. You don't know whether you're entering them to go to a real genuine business group, or somebody is trying to get your credit card number, right? So they always target people who are not very knowledgeable of all these things, right? Innocent person may believe that it's probably a good deal I'm getting through this ad, so he may try to purchase something through his credit card and then lose all the sensitive information. Okay? Now, a spyware is somewhat slightly different. It really acts like a Trojan kind of thing. It spies on your system, as the name itself indicates, and tries to gather sensitive information about you, your computer, your usage pattern, without your consent. So once it's infected, you don't have any control, and it tries to run behind the screen, again in a stealth mode. You never notice their presence right away. As they start infecting most of your system files and kind of occupy what you call a majority of your CPU runtime overhead, that's the time you start realizing your performance of the machine is very slow, right? So even like when you get sick, you don't really start feeling it right away. After a certain time, right? Once the virus or whatever infected you has really spread around within your body, then when you start getting all the symptoms and all those things, right? Same way, once your machine is infected, you don't really see the symptom of it being infected. But once the virus, spyware or the virus propagates and infects several files, system files, the processes, everything within your system, and they all behave arbitrarily, and the majority of CPU time is spent on those processes running just for waste of time, then your own processes are not getting the required CPU slots, right? So then only you start noticing what? The loss of performance, right? So that's what they try to achieve most of the time, because if you detect the presence right away, you're going to remove them, right? So they'll try to run most of the time what's called the stealth mode, so that it's very difficult to detect the presence in the beginning phase. Okay, so once they infect the registry files and the rest of the system, then it's very difficult to detect them and remove them, right? Alright, so let's start with this. Let me see. Any questions so far? It's not a new module, and this module 6, I don't know whether you noticed it or not. There are the last few slides, I think I didn't cover them. I covered up to this point, I believe, sample security requirements. So I'm going to go over the remaining few slides to finish it up. Okay, this is module 6. Alright? So that you can read it very easily. Remember, we have seen attack trees and attack patterns some time back. Another notion is called attack surface. Basically, it captures the entry points and exit points in application. So what are the ways a user can give inputs to an application or kind of interact with the application, and what are the possible ways the application can interact back with the user, right? So that is really captured with this notion called attack surface of an application. Okay? So the entry points could be the inputs to application through interfaces, services, protocols, and code. And exit points will be the outputs of the application, including error messages produced by the application, response to user interaction. So this attack surface should be accessible only by users who are trusted to run, be having access to the application. If you let an untrusted user to access the attack surface, then he may know, for example, if you have a user who is not who is yet to be trusted, see the error messages, then he can really infer some information from those error messages. So you have to be really careful who gets access to even those error messages that are being displayed by the application. Okay. So it's always important that you reduce the attack surface of your software application. So a smaller attack surface mitigates the security risk, because as the smaller that you let the smaller the scope that you give the user to interact with the application, the lower the risk. The more the scope you give a user to interact with the application, the more you expose the application to risk. Okay? So you always try to reduce the attack surface of your application. Now, this is what has the relationship between the different levels of access: administrator only access, typical user access, anonymous access. Anonymous access is the more relaxed access. You let anyone to access your application. Admin only access is very rigid. You let only administrators to access your application. And on the other side, you have from where you can access. Only local access, restricted access, or remote access. The name itself indicates what it means, right? So as you increase this way, for example, if you have anonymous access, which means anyone can access, and remote access, which means anyone can access from anywhere, right? What it means, that's the scenario where you expose the application to a lot of users, right? So that's this point where the attack surface is very large. Whereas if the admin can only access it and you provide only local access, then this is this area where the attack surface is very low. So this graph is basically capturing the area of the attack surface. So if the administrator only can access from a local network, then attack surface area is low. Whereas if an anonymous user can access the application from anywhere in the internet, then the attack surface is very, very high. So this, you understand the meaning of this graph now? It captures the kind of the area of the attack surface with respect to the level of access you provide to user and from where they can access the application. Now, yeah, this is why I stopped at that time, because now by this time you should have seen TCP UDP in your networks course, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of you are taking networks. Some people have taken it earlier, but some people are taking it now. Some people have not taken it yet. But you know what TCP and UDP, right? I know I talked briefly about it. A UDP is a connectionless protocol trying to just send a message from one client to server. So there's no kind of connection established. Whereas if a typical kind of, say for example, if you want to make a credit card transaction, say you're buying a book on Amazon or something, right? You cannot just send a message to Amazon server telling I want to buy a book and it delivers the book for you. You have to kind of establish a connection to that, and then if you're using credit card, of course, then you have to use HTTPS, right? You have to kind of encrypt your sensitive information, all those things. So if you want to really have the client and server, the two machines that are communicating, to really interact with each other, knowing about each other's resources and the capacity and all those things, so that the connection can really support all the resource availabilities, then you have to really establish a TCP connection between the two machines and then do the communication. So a TCP connection really helps you to kind of keep track of it's kind of like a logging thing, because you can really keep track of what messages that are sent between the two sites. Whereas the UDP connection is mostly like what I say here, a fire and forget, which means you send a message, you cannot keep track who sent the message and where it came from and all those things. Because each message, UDP message is standalone, because it's called connectionless. As a TCP is a connection-oriented protocol. So from a network point of view, okay, so when you're designing an application that is network, has to be provided network access, you'll have to think about whether you will support a UDP connection or a TCP connection for your application, right? So if you want all this kind of, what do you call this, tracking feature and kind of what do you call, who sent the messages and all these things, you have to provide what? Go for what? TCP connection, because a UDP connection cannot really trace back and see who sent it. And there's no kind of history, because a TCP connection has all the sequence numbers, all those things, right? So you can really kind of trace back what messages came, how many messages came, how many bytes came, and all those things. Whereas in a UDP, as the name says, fire and forget, you cannot really go back and account for all those messages, right? So when it comes from an attack surface point of view, right, Your application should not really support UDP unless it is needed. Okay. So in my networks class, I say sometimes 85% of the applications the internet are based on TCP, not UDP. So that's from a security point of view. The internet applications don't support UDP most of the time. So UDP is mostly within the network. If you want to apply for DHCP or IP address within the network, you can use a UDP connection, or for AR address resolution or something else. So very small time communication, short time communication without any sensitive information. Okay, so short time, sometime on a real time basis, no sensitive information. Only under these circumstances you go for UDP, whereas most of the time you go for a TCP connection. So from attack surface point of view, a TCP connection has a lower attack surface, whereas UDP provides scope for anyone to send message and not be able to keep track of who sends it, right? So UDP actually increases the attack surface for an application. Whereas a TCP kind of lowers the attack surface. Clear? Any question? And again, I'm not sure who is taking networks now has seen IPsec in that course. This is a secure way of running IP thing. You can really avoid this, what is called this spoofing attacks. So running IPsec as on the top of your IP protocol, and then TCP runs on top of IPsec, you can really avoid spoofing. Okay. So with TCP, it's possible to integrate IPsec more easily and kind of avoid spoofing. Whereas with UDP, you cannot really avoid spoofing that much. Okay. Okay, and from a kind of a design point of view, it's always better to keep your code as simple as possible. Don't include too many functionalities which are not needed, because it's an advisable design, it's a principle that include only those functionalities that are needed for the application. So don't include things which are not needed. Okay. So again, so we want to look at the attack surface and the code quality. A program application that has a lower attack surface and has a good code quality has a lower risk of being attacked. Whereas the application has a higher, larger attack surface and has a poor, bad code quality has a high security risk. Because if your code is not really good quality, has a lot of vulnerabilities or kind of loopholes and all those things, and your application itself has a higher attack surface, then it has a high security risk being attacked. Okay? Now, so again, from a feature point of view, the software must provide a number of features to a large and diverse set of users, right? You should be able to let a user to turn off those features or disable them if they are not necessary. Okay, so you should not let a software to run with multiple features if the user is not going to use those features of the software. Okay, so you may have diverse features for a software, but if the user is not going to run them, you should be able to allow the user to turn them off, so that an attacker is not using those features to infect that machine. Okay? Now, from a principle of secure software design point of view, we pretty much covered most of the things throughout this course, but just want to recapitulate everything together. So these are principles, some of the principles that software designers should follow, irrespective of the implementation. So this is more of a high-level, architecture level design, software architecture level design principles, not on the implementation level. Okay? Now, securing the weakest link. What is meant by securing the weakest link? For example, if you are having, say, scenario where you have a client and server trying to communicate, and there is a network, and this network channel is encrypted. You encrypt everything that you send, right? And you have, say, some firewall running on this, and some thing that to protect the server, right? To put a firewall again running on the server. You see that it's like a chain of protection. The first is the firewall at the client side, then you have the encryption on the channel side, and then the server, right? An attacker will try to find the weakest link on this. If he thinks that it's easy to infect the server and get to see the message on the server side, he will not try to hack the channel and try to go to the cryptanalysis and decrypt, because cryptanalysis is generally more difficult to do compared to hacking a machine or a server and trying to capture whatever message you want to capture, right? So an attacker will always try to attack the weakest link. You see what I mean? So if it's going to be difficult to hack the channel and capture a message, he'll better target the end host, the client or server, and try to penetrate to that machine and get access to that message or infect the machine and then do the damage. Okay? So this is one principle, which means what? From a design point of view, you have to make sure your weakest link is strong enough. Alright? Because you may have a chain of links like this, like the two firewalls and channel encryption. So if you think the two end hosts are more vulnerable for being attacked than the network channel, you have to make sure the two end hosts are very secure enough from not being attacked. Okay, so it's also common in day-to-day life, right? They always say make sure the weakest link is strong so that you are not easily attacked, right? And another design principle is defense in depth, which is mostly like a backup. So remember that we talked about this in the firewall chapter. What was that called? Anyone can remember that?
The firewall. Say it again.
In the firewall chapter, we talked about a particular category of firewall that provides basically its backup kind of defense upfront. No, not US proxy. The one that is facing the internet and faces all the attack.
Oh, reverse proxy?
It's called demilitarized zone.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah. So it's not necessary to have this, right? Because you could run a network without having a DMZ. But what does it provide you? It provides you a depth. Defense in depth means if someone attacks your network, right, they have to first attack the DMZ, penetrate through that, and then you have two more firewalls, right? So that's what I mean by defense in depth. Okay? So you could get away with just one level of protection, but that one level of protection may not provide you more security, because if that layer is penetrated or breached, then they can infect the system, right? With this, if you really want to protect something deep inside your network, they have to go through multiple levels of defense, penetrate to all of them, and then really infect your network, the machine that you want to